This episode is brought to you by our partner, Ice Barrel. Cold therapy was an integral part of my training. When I was a gymnast, I would be in that cold tub after every training session for a number of years, and it's still something I take part of as part of my recovery, my mental health, as well as my performance in and out of the gym. Please check out their FAQ page for everything you need to know about Ice Barrel and cold therapy. If you've never tried cold exposure before, we cannot recommend Ice Barrel enough. They have events all over the US, and we also introduced conscious therapy as an added session at our Power Monkey camp. It was a huge hit with our campers and coaches alike. We cannot wait to have them back again. Please use Power Monkey, that's all caps, Power Monkey, no spaces, and save $75 off your Ice Barrel. Welcome to the Power Monkey podcast, where we chat with the best in the world of fitness about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Mike Service, and on today's episode, we have Steph Mireles. You may remember her by her maiden name, Steph Chung. Steph competed at the 2018 CrossFit Games as an individual athlete and has continued to stay at a high level, all while taking on a full-time job as a physician's assistant. We discuss balancing these worlds of having a full-time job while competing at the highest level. We also take on the daunting subject of the medical care system and what she deems to be the reasons to be optimistic about the future in terms of creating a more holistic, proactive approach to medicine. Steph was also part of the inaugural group of athletes on the Professional Fitness Athletes Association, known as the PFAA, and we go over some of the things she thinks are necessary to make the competitive fitness world not only more fair, but also more safe for the competitors. We really enjoyed this conversation with Steph, as it's our first time meeting her. We hope you're able to get some more insight into some of the athletes who you guys revere, who you guys look up to out on that competition floor at the highest level. Enjoy. Look at that. Maraca shoes. Yes.
Wow.
Hi.
Comes in flexing.
That's what we're starting with right there. Color coded and everything.
I know I have a little bit of OCD, so yeah, the color coding robs my husband's like, really? Why? Like,
It's
because
my favorite background so far. I love shoes, and I can see you do too. They look mostly noble. Are you a noble athlete?
She is.
yes.
All right, there you go.
I want to ask you, are you going to get to meet Tom Brady now?
Yeah, how do you feel?
God,
about
I
the
hope
new
so.
progress?
I hope so.
What a
I know I saw it this morning, and it was news to us. They didn't tell any of the athletes. So yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, how is this gonna play into the athletes? Because obviously from Boston, I'm a huge fan. So
I mean, my question would be like, how am I going to get my birthday invitation to him now? So that's
yeah.
Well, Jordan's not that far away. He always says he's in Boston, even though he's in New Hampshire.
same.
Jordan doesn't care about football either, but do you know who Tom Brady is, Jordan?
Thomas Brady the third, of course. I know who Tom is.
Just because you're in Boston, or do you actually know his
No, I
accolades?
used to actually care about football, and I used to watch it years ago, and then I just lost the interest at some point because I had other better things to do, I think. I don't know.
Steph, are you a football fan at all?
Huge.
Are you
Huge football
really?
fan. Yeah, I grew up in a football family. So I have two younger brothers. My dad coached them through football all through their young lives. And so I'm like, we were the household that had football on like all Sunday, like the different games and different TVs, flipping back and forth. So yeah,
I'm
I
guessing
actually am
New
a huge
England is
football
your
fan.
team.
Yeah.
And growing up, you probably were just thinking, hey, for the rest of my life, I am in just football paradise. I mean, growing up
Sure
when Brady
was.
was around, that's such a false sense of being a football. Go to Detroit and see what it's like to be be Mike and be a Cleveland Browns fan and see what it's like to enjoy football for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're in that era, aren't we?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a year and now it's been 3. I think, you know, I accept that we grew up in like the golden age of New England sports. And so everyone goes through their ups and downs. They'll come
It's a
back.
beautiful thing to watch. Very, very lucky. I wanted to ask you, well, we were talking about this before we jumped on, and we're kind of just jumping right in, but I did the Steph Chung workout yesterday.
Oh,
And
yeah?
yes. And first, I'm curious if you know what it is.
I'm trying to think. Which one?
Yeah. Okay. So Jordan found this, and it's 3 rounds of 10 or 12 cals on the bike, 12 lateral dumbbell box step overs, select the height and the weight, and then a 50-foot handstand walk, 1 minute rest, 3 rounds. You familiar with that workout?
Did I write this one for barbell spin?
Yeah. Bar bend, I thought.
Bar bend. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
I did it yesterday, and it's actually not that bad. Like, I survived, and I was like, you know
Good.
what? Thank you, Steph, for writing a workout that didn't absolutely destroy me, and for putting handstand walk in there.
Steph, Dave needs some preface for this one because he recently did a workout
Oh,
that he
God.
died on. And as he was telling us the workout that he was
Told you not to
doing,
bring this up, Mike.
more details started to come out. So first, everybody went, well, Dave, it took him like 65 minutes to do this workout.
No, I wrote everybody. I was like, somebody else needs to do this workout because I can't be the only one. And I was like, hey, guys, do you mind trying this workout too? Because it killed me, and I would like to have someone to chat about it with. And then as I was sending the workout over, I was like, it took me almost 70 minutes to complete. It was really hard. And then I looked, and there was a 40-minute time cap, and I was like, oh shit! Like, did not pay attention. And then
Gets better.
someone from the team wrote, "Did you also not notice that it was a partner workout?" It was great. It was great.
Well, that explains it. Hopefully it made you feel a
Yeah.
little bit better that it was meant to be done with two people in like, half the time.
Yeah, but
Made
that
me
didn't
feel very
stop him
stupid.
from like really still pushing me to do it, which I did not do because I'm not trying to
Sane.
kill myself. But he's like, yeah, no, you have to do it. Like, there's no way I'm
It's
doing that.
actually, I wrote it into his contract that if I do a stupid workout, Jordan has to do a stupid workout too. So
What's your pick then? What's your stupid workout?
Well, no, I'm just saying that I was his partner for the workout. I did it with him. He just did all the reps. So,
yeah, yeah,
There
that
you go.
was
And
clever
partner in spirit.
response, Jordan. Clever response. Way to get out of it.
thank you.
The workout for all of these who are listening, curious about it, it's called CD. I found it on Wadwell. I normally go on there and just pick workouts every once in a while. And it was 7 rounds of Cindy down to 1 round of Cindy. So 7, 6, 5, 4, all the way down to 1. And between each of those rounds, you have to do 2 rounds of DT. And so you end up doing 28 rounds of Cindy and 14 rounds of DT. The weight on DT is supposed to be 70 kilo. I ended up just doing 95 pounds, and it was awful. I was like, I don't know how someone is going to do this RX. It's like, oh, it's a partner workout. So I did it with 95 by myself. Yeah.
So as a partner, is one partner doing Cindy and the other partner is doing
No, you
DT?
just switch back and forth, I think.
Okay.
You do a round, I think, and the other person does a round. It's
Okay.
But let's just think of it as an individual workout moving forward. That's more how it should be done.
Sounds like a character building experience.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. But speaking of handstand walking in the workout that was named in your honor, I also saw that you posted the other day hoping that handstand walks would be in the upcoming Open.
Always.
Speaking of your gymnastics background, I always have to ask about gymnastics background when I know someone was a gymnast. How long did you do it for?
Since I like to say I was 2.
Started when you were 2?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that was like the mommy and me type class. I obviously wasn't like on the bars at 2, but started very young. Apparently, I had a lot of energy at home. My mom likes to say that I would just go upside down on everything, and she felt it would be safer if there were mats involved versus the couch cushions. So she went to class with me, and it was clear from the beginning that I really, really liked it. So I did it all the way through my young age. I started competing, I think, when I was probably 6 or 7, just for fun, and it went on from there. I did take a couple of years off in high school. I had a back injury when I was 12, came back for a season, and then it got worse. So I took some time off in high school, did like high school gymnastics, and then I did club in college.
Okay, awesome. Where did you go to school?
I went to Cornell. So they had
Amazing.
a D1 program that I was not cut out for after being off for a couple of years in high school. And so club was the answer, and it was amazing.
I love it. I love that they still have club opportunities of like gymnastics, like club soccer or club ultimate frisbee, sure, but club gymnastics, you still have to commit, you know what I mean? You still have to be in there, coach, get gym time, learn new skills. It's still a commitment. Maybe not a scholarship commitment, but still awesome to see you were able to do it all the way through college.
Yeah, it was really fun. I was really fortunate that I came into a well-established club gymnastics program. So we already had a relationship with the gym, and our coach was the owner of that gym. And so we had practices 3 times a week. There was already a ride system because it was off campus. So it was really, really well organized when I came into it. And then we were able to build it a little bit through, I was the president of the gymnastics team in my junior and senior year. And so we were driving around New England, competing against other teams. And the community was really great. I mean, in terms of funding, we did all the fundraising ourselves. We got a little bit from the university, but it was really kind of a passion project. We all, paid to go compete. We paid to go to nationals. And it was kind of the perfect balance. I'd only ever known gymnastics as like a competitive, semi-stressful type thing. And I think that was really where a lot of the other girls came from. And we had a couple men on the team as well. Some people, it was a huge range of experience. Some people had like a little bit of competitive experience. Other people were brand new and kind of knew how to do a cartwheel. And so we made up a floor routine for them and they had a ton of fun with it. And then there were people like me who were kind of at the level 9, 10 level prior and just wanted to continue it as long as we could. So it was amazing. It was such a good team.
I love hearing that. And we're trying to get Mike to become a gymnast, working on his handstands, be able to compete some point soon. Chelsea Memo, who was on the '08 Olympic team, world champion herself, who you may recognize the name. She has started an adult gymnastics competition.
Wow.
All gymnasts that still would like to test out their chops, even though they're not in competitive shape at, a high level anymore. And it's good to see that the sport is starting to create some more opportunities. And CrossFit too has just exposed adults to say, hey, you know what? Maybe my competitive career is not over. I'm not going to be doing, your Chenko triple folds anymore. But let me go and try, see if I can put a floor routine together, Will Ferrell style. I love it. That's awesome. Moving over to daily life for you now. We'll get into the CrossFit side and things like that, but it seems like life has changed quite a bit for you recently, being now congratulations on being a PA and life kind of moving into a new direction. But can you give us a little insight into like what a day looks like for you in terms of number of hours you're training versus number of hours actually working full time?
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, life has changed dramatically in the past 2 months. I started this job. I graduated from PA school in August and I had a little gap. I started my job in November. And I have 2 different kinds of days. I have days I'm on shift and then I have days I'm not on shift. The days I'm on shift, I work 13s. So we get to the hospital at 6, we leave at 7. And that day for me is not a huge training day. I can talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but I'm pretty much at work. I'm not a morning workout person. So waking up at 4 a.m. to like fit in a workout is not high yield for me. But then the days that I'm off, I do that 3 days a week. So we're 3 on, 4 off. And so the days that I'm off, I have a lot more time. And so that day looks a little more normal, but I would still say I'm not training at full volume like I was before. I'm doing, 90 minutes to 2 hours, kind of a classic strength lift skill, and then a Metcon.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, Steph, and maybe it's like apples to oranges, but the schedule you have now, let's say training wise, and you could include like work-life balance, however you want to. Do you like the schedule now more, same, less than when you were like training 10, 11, 12 times a week, like fully focused on CrossFit?
Yeah, it's so hard to compare because it's so different, but I think they're right for the times in my life that I was doing them. I loved training and competing. That's why I chose to do it full time. I think anyone who does it has to love it because it's your entire life. So yes, of course, there are times when you're like tired, you don't want to train, but it's your job, so you do it anyways. I think that part of that time of my life, I was really, really excited to do that and really happy to do that. Would I want to do it now? I don't know. I probably still could, but I think for right now, for me, there was always life after that competitive phase. And I'm really excited to be in this phase of my life, but it is a huge adjustment. So to your point, do I like it better? I don't know yet. I do love my job. I will say that I think I'm still trying to find the balance between moving as much as I want to and feel that my body still wants to, and also prioritizing my job and just feeling, after 13 hours, I'm so dead mentally and physically. So there are a couple days that I've been, I'm coming home from work and I'm like, I'm never going to be able to unwind and go to bed in an hour and a half. Like I have to move. I just feel so like sedentary. I was so sedentary all day. So then I come home and I do like a 10 to 15 minute workout on the bike. I run a little bit and then I feel so much better. But I wouldn't say that's the majority of my days working. So I will say that right now I'm training at my job. So it is very taxing to be engaged for 12 hours and also not just practicing and treating patients, but also learning and trying to learn the nuances of critical care. So I will say the days feel a little bit more active for me, I think, now than they will in the future as a provider. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's like, and I try not to load the question because we get athletes in all phases of their career. And then Dave and I reflect on our careers and think if there's like lessons that we think we've learned now, wisdom that we would impart on our younger selves. So I know you're still kind of, like new into your new phase. And that's a little bit where I was going to it is, could you think of something maybe you've just learned recently from this new phase that if you would change something in like previous athlete phase, Steph, or any wisdom to impart on your prior self?
That's such a good question. I love that question. I think often about how lessons I've learned along the way contribute to where I am now, but thinking about what I know now and how it would contribute to my previous self, I think I would tell myself to enjoy the process always. And it's really hard to do. And I think I tried to do that a lot and be reflective on knowing the experience of being a competitive full-time athlete wasn't forever for me. So just to enjoy it as much as I could and, love the everyday process, not just the being at competition process that everyone loves. That's what we train for. So I think I would say that, because obviously there are days now that are really tough at the hospital. I'm not good yet at what I do. It's certainly not easy, and I hope it never is easy, but you look back at the times when you were good at something and you were, something you knew really well, you were really comfortable doing as in it was familiar. And so I think I would just tell myself to make sure that I really enjoyed everything about it and took it all in, because phases of your life aren't forever. And I think that's a good thing. We're meant to challenge ourselves, do new things, do hard things, but you also need to be able to look back and say that you really appreciated everything that you had.
Dave, I know she used one of your phrases you like, so I'm going to let you go in that on doing hard things. Dave tells us that all the time within our team.
I mean, it's life, right? I mean,
yeah,
life is about working through hard things. And I just appreciate that mentality so much. I mean, I think everybody's different in terms of their appreciation and love of the process versus the end result, the day in the gym versus the day of the competition. And that goes for work as well as being an athlete. But my curiosity is around you being you're a competitive person, right? Whether that's in the classroom or in CrossFit setting, gymnastics, whatever it might be. Your CrossFit self at this point still wants to compete at a high level, I'm assuming. Do you, possibly a little nod to the side, do you think that right now it's feasible to qualify? We have the Open coming up. Is it feasible for you to think that qualification to a quarters, a semis, potentially the games is realistic? Or are you taking this year to say, let me just get my ducks in a row. Let me get my life in order in terms of my new work career. Let me just see how it goes. And then we'll see moving forward whether or not competing at the highest level is still realistic.
Yeah, that's kind of the question of the start of the year, right? With everything coming up. So it's a great question. I'd like to say I'm more on the side of the second, where I'm saying openly that I'm choosing to prioritize my career. There's a huge learning curve. I think I'll be training for like, thinking I'm in training for a year to 2 years, learning critical care. So the priority for sure is my job right now, but I do love to compete. I am a competitive person. And I said that PA school was also my priority in the past couple of years, and I was able to go to semifinals last year. So I never like to say that I'm not going to try, because I think you miss, obviously it's a cliche, but you miss every opportunity you don't aim for. So, but I think there's something to be said for determining your priorities and not trying to be great at everything, because that just leads to burnout. So yeah, priority number one is my job, but I love to work out. I love to compete. I love to train with a purpose. I don't get a lot yet out of going to the gym just for, fun, general health. I'm not in that mindset yet. So I'd like to see where I am in the open. Certainly my training has changed in the past 2 months. I mean, I thought I was going to have a little more balance of training with work, and it just hasn't really turned out to be that way. So I've not tested myself in any meaningful way as I usually do leading up to the open. So we'll see what happens. But I certainly hope that I make quarterfinals, because they've opened up now to many more people. It's a much higher percent that gets into quarterfinals. And I think I'm going to be a lot more of a cusp person in quarterfinals. Like, it depends a lot on the programming. If they have a 5K row and there's a huge pool of people doing it, then, if that's not your strength, you end up getting hit a lot harder by that type of workout that's a little more biased. So I think it depends a lot on how it's programmed, but I'd like to do it and see where I'm at. I've always said to people that the open, quarterfinals, whatever it is, it's like our annual fitness test. And if you're not testing yourself, then you have no incentive to get better. For me, at least, certainly I have no drive to get better if I don't have something to test myself against. So I'd like to live what I've been telling people for years, which is like, even if you feel like this was not your best year, you were injured, you had life stuff going on, you were unfit, you should still do the open and see where you're at. So I'd like to think that I'm still that person, and we'll do the quarterfinals. And no matter where I land, obviously it would be hard to see the honest truth if I'm not actually as fit as I was last year. But I also am going to try to be kind to myself in knowing that there's been a lot of other things going on.
Yeah, such
lately.
an important balance there. This one just comes from my perspective of having gone through something similar in my own career. Finished my college career, and when you're in college and when you're a younger athlete, you can do whatever you want, right? You can eat, you don't need to sleep, you go party, you work out, everything seems to be fine. You come back next day and you're recovered, ready to go. And kind of life happens, you get older. The end of my career, I was 28 when I retired, into 29, old man. They called me the grandpa of the team. And to be able to get the most out of my training, I had to put emphasis in so many other areas, right? Of balanced life, not being in the gym as much, making every turn count a little bit more, make every minute in the gym have much more targeted focus. Obviously, the emphasis on recovery and sleep and diet and mental training and all those other things starts to take a bigger focus. Have you been able to say, okay, I'm not going to be able to have as many hours in the gym. It's just the reality of the way that my life is right now. But there are other things I can be doing that maybe I de-emphasized or didn't have time for in the past that don't require me to go balls to the wall training. Can I put some more emphasis into my diet or my sleep or my mental training or my relationships or my hobbies? Have you thought about ways that you can be improving without saying, I need to be putting 6 hours a day in the gym physically, to say, hey, maybe I might get better in these other ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I like that perspective too. As we get older, isn't it funny that you're like ancient at 28 in
Oh man.
gymnastics?
Yeah. I mean, end of the world. Yep.
That's one of the things I love about CrossFit. It's like you look at the 75 plus division and they're all still so fit. And you're like, I want to still be doing this when I'm 75. Yes, absolutely. I think food has nutrition is one of the things that I really had dialed in. I'm a pretty type A person. So when someone said eat these macros, it was like every day that was exactly this. That was exactly it. Some things have been shifted with lifestyle. We don't have time to eat 3 meals at work. That's just how it is. So like the days that I work, things are a little bit different. Obviously my sleep is off, working some nights, having to go in early after being on late as well. So at this time, there's a lot of other things that I really did have dialed in when I was an athlete that are not the same now. But I will say that as I've gotten older, I think I've benefited from a little bit of perspective. Like when you're young, it's like, I need to be in the gym all the time. I need to be doing all the training, all the intensity. I need to be pushing myself really, really hard physically. And as I've gotten older, there's been a little more of a mental focus and side of things where it's like my body actually really likes lower volume. I've learned that over the 2 years of PA school. Like I have way less injuries. I feel better. Like there's some weird stuff when you go from working out all the time to sitting down all the time that have come up. But in general, like I feel much better doing less volume. So the focus on like, you clean and jerk once a week. So those clean and jerks are perfect. Like the focus and emphasis is not on the weight, it's on the execution. And if you build this really good base of execution and mentally how you're approaching the lift, not just physically, are you doing the lift? I think that has helped me a lot. So yes, I would love for all those lifestyle things to be in a row. I think realistically for me with this job, it's not always possible, but I certainly have focused on different things in my training, knowing that I'm going to get less volume, knowing that I don't have 2 sessions a day. My workouts are much more intense. I just know I'm going to get 1 Metcon. And in the middle of it, when I'm suffering and I mentally want to check out, I'm like, this is all you have for the day. You are done after this. So you have nothing else. You got to make it count. So that's a huge change, I think. And as you get older, I think that's important. And you just have less time, maybe less stamina to recover. Anyways, that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like I think we hear it all the time, especially when we're younger, like quality over quantity. But I think when you're a younger athlete, you're like, I can out quantity everything. I'll just do more and I'll be better. And then like, you made a point, like maybe there's some injuries and there's probably even more frustrations where then you think you need to do more again to fix it. And I liked where you just said like your workouts now are maybe even a little bit more intense because it's like, this is all the time I have. And the question I was going to ask on that front, you kind of came into it, was just, have you, I don't know, found yourself then, mentally maybe being able to almost flip the switch in that sense? Like you go into the gym and it's like, it's your reward. Like in the past, I know you liked it, but now it's almost even more a reward.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's the mentality of training is different now. It's not a job. It's something I get to do. And I always tried to think about it like that. I don't know that every day felt like that. When it's your job, there's some days you just don't want to go to work and you have to go to work anyways. And that's how it is. But certainly with 4 days a week to train, sometimes only 3 if, my schedule is a little bit funky or I work a night and then I can't work out the next day, I'm sleeping. Being at the gym is like, even if I don't feel like going or I think I don't have the energy, I'm like, this is it. You go to work tomorrow, you have nothing tomorrow. So you might not feel like it today, but you're going to regret it if you wake up tomorrow and you don't go. And I will say that being at the gym, seeing all my friends that I used to see every day, now I see, a handful of times a week, that certainly feels like a reward. And I almost have to keep myself on track. Like, okay, Steph, you only have 2 hours here. You need to like be efficient because you have so much to get done in a short amount of time. You can't be here all day, but I also want to be there all day because I like seeing people. And I will say that's a big shift for me. Like I have to hold myself to the amount of time I have because, to your point, it's such a good feeling, like a reward that you get to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like merging these worlds a little bit, in the healthcare world, and we know that just health in general is such a big talking point within CrossFit. They're putting a bigger emphasis into it. And we've heard you talk about trying to bridge that gap a little bit more between the fitness side and healthcare. Some new companies are emerging, Wild Health and some other ways of being able to get a little bit more of the fitness side. Mike and I actually went to teach a course fairly recently in Indiana, just outside of Indiana. Hancock, CrossFit Hancock. Is that what it was,
Yep.
Mike?
Yeah.
And it was a super interesting facility. It was almost like a hospital and PT center and CrossFit center together, where when you walk in, they give you an assessment, you have a meeting with a doctor, they prescribe not only medication, but also fitness to go along with it. And it was the type of setup that seemed inevitable and the right way to be moving forward in terms of how these things need to merge. Curious from your perspective and having a hand in both sides of this, how you envision what would be ideal to be able to say, hey, the people that I'm dealing with would benefit from fitness in the way that I see it benefiting people on a daily basis. Do you have hopes to see these things merge together in a bigger way?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think years ago, we used to say, my friend who was a practicing PT at the time, we used to say that the dream was that we opened a gym and then she had a PT clinic attached. And part of your membership was X many visits with PT, whether, we think of PT as something that fixes you when you're injured, but really there's a side of PT that should be proactive in
Sure.
keeping you healthy so you don't get injured. And we both had that dream, that vision that someday there would be a version where you saw the PT not because you were hurt, but because you just wanted to stay healthy. And then you went to the gym because you then were able to move really well and get even healthier. And I think it's the future. It's the way forward. Certain healthcare companies are starting to incentivize people who have gym memberships who are healthier. And I think that proactive aspect of healthcare, is so important for the future. It's just not sustainable for us to be late to the game in taking care of all these chronic conditions after the fact. It's so hard to undo them, not only from a medical standpoint, but also from a habit standpoint. People build these habits for years and years and years, and it's hard, even if you have, I work in critical care. So people who have heart attacks and strokes, even when you have a life-changing event like that, even if you realize that you should change something about your life, it's really hard to do it if you've been living your life a certain way all this time. So that's one of the things obviously that I love about CrossFit is they're trying to get ahead of the game in healthcare and talk to doctors and say that you should not only prescribe medicine because medicine can help people, but fitness as medicine, movement as medicine. So I certainly hope to see more of that in the future. And I think the PT side is another facet of how healthcare can partner with CrossFit and do really great things to keep people in the gym.
Well, Mike, I'll let you jump in a second. I just want to follow that up and say that's encouraging to hear someone in your area of expertise acknowledge that it's valuable. Obviously, your background helps with that. But how realistic is it to think that the medical establishment is ready to move into a proactive approach from your perspective versus a reactive approach? It seems like the entire system is built on a reaction of a disease or an issue that then needs assistance rather than saying, hey, you know what? Instead of worrying about a heart attack 10 years from now, let's put XYZ in place to maybe be a little bit more preventative when it comes to that. Do you think it's realistic when you walk into the office every day and you see the other doctors doing their things, do you think it's a realistic change that's going to happen in our lifetime, or is this kind of our grandkids are going to have the benefits of this?
Such a good question. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about a realistic view because I tend to be an optimist, and you know how I feel about this, but so I'll give you the optimistic view and why I think that we are on the cusp of change. So I think that firstly, there's a big shift in healthcare now. I think there's a realization both on the hospital side and the insurance side that things are too expensive and it's costing too much to take care of patients. So there have been changes over the years to make it so that it's more affordable to take care of patients. And the most affordable option is to not have patients get problems at all, right? I think the trouble is that as you said, the system, particularly the insurance reimbursement system, is built on problem, itemize it, here's the fix, and here's what we reimburse for. Mm-hmm. There is not a concrete way to itemize a problem that didn't happen because you stopped it before it got there. But so part of the problem is how do you quantify the benefit of a patient not getting a disease you don't know they would have in the first place, but they might have? So we need to come up with a way to do that effectively, right? And then we also need to acknowledge that how do you incentivize people to do the habits that then make a difference in the long run to their health, right? So there's both the insurance side, the practical business side of what's it worth to us to incentivize these things for people, and then how do we apply it so that people actually do them, because they're hard. It's expensive to eat healthy, fresh food. It's also time consuming to prepare it. It's time consuming to go to a gym. It's also hard. It doesn't always feel good. All of these things that have gotten us where we are. So, but I like to think that on both sides, there's a readiness and an acceptance that things need to change. You already see people, going to a CrossFit gym, getting healthy, acknowledging that I go do this thing and it makes me feel better. I think that message needs to spread, not just in CrossFit, but, in all fitness things. I try not to be just CrossFit is the one way. I think there's many ways that people can get in shape, and whatever way works for them should work for them. And that should be celebrated. And on the other hand, I think that insurance companies and hospitals are seeing that fitness, if they can tell people, oh, we'll actually reimburse for your gym membership, that's taking away one barrier. Maybe it's not fully incentivizing people to go to the gym. Maybe you're not guaranteeing they're going, but just having someone and saying, my health insurance, I was really excited when I joined the hospital. That was a benefit of my health insurance, was saying, we'll reimburse you X amount a month for a gym membership. And I think that's huge, because once you get data on how many people are applying for that reimbursement, you can start tracking. They track with Apple Watch now. You can track all of those metrics. And the more metrics we have, the more proof we have for the insurance companies that this is actually a good business model for them.
Yeah,
so it's a long way of saying, I think
the optimistic approach. Yes.
It's the optimistic approach. And yeah, I think the more that we can get that message out, the more people will say, I'm actually tired of, taking all this medicine. I don't want to do it anymore. It makes me feel crummy. And maybe there's a different way.
Yeah, and that's the other side of convincing the pharmaceutical companies that this is a good direction to take, rather than shoving medicine in front of people's faces all the time. But Mike, I'll let you jump in and ask your question.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little paraphrasing and then a question with it, because I liked where you said the readiness of the sides to kind of maybe find a new way or a new solution, and then the other thing that you said was taking away barriers that maybe keep people away from trying what would be good for them. And Dave had mentioned this gym we went to in Indianapolis, or outside Indianapolis. It was one of those things that you wish everybody could see and be able to take part in, because there were people coming in to see their general practitioner, and then they would be identified as pre-diabetic. So the general practitioner was writing them a script to go meet one of the trainers at the gym to start working out. That was that was part of their protocol. And it was Yeah, it was refreshing because it was showing kind of bridge building from like one entity to another. And I think that's probably, within our circles, that's where we can benefit a little bit is or be a part of the solution is don't look at everybody as enemies, but like find who's ready to kind of merge and make bridges and find ways to go in. So when we get to talk to somebody like you or talk to a Julie Fouché or anybody that's in the medical field now, like you're strong advocates for the health and wellness field to start putting those things together. So it's a big paraphrase and not a big question. It's more like starting to get into like a thank you that like you're in there now. And I'm hopeful that optimism that you said you have is something that you feel like maybe you see other doctors starting to even notice.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's one of the reasons I've always wanted to go into healthcare, but I saw this really big opportunity to bridge, as you said, between the fitness community and also the medical side, being that a lot of people who walk into a doctor's office aren't going to walk into a gym, certainly not on their own, maybe not even with a lot of convincing. So, but I like that model of you see a doctor and part of the treatment plan is fitness. And so if there can be some smooth pathway between them all, it's, I think that's really important. I think sadly, I think people are more likely to see a physical therapist than they are a doctor. Maybe, if they get injured, they go see the person who gets them better. And so I think that, as you mentioned, that marriage between the PT facility and the gym is huge. And if we could add some medical spin onto that to get people seeing their doctor so they realize these things like prediabetes before it becomes full-blown diabetes and it's harder to reverse, really important. That's in the future in my career. That's something I hope to be able to focus on and build other bridges. Even though I don't work in primary care, it's something that means a lot to me.
And I think it's so, it connects so many dots, even from how we teach within our special little disciplines, like with gymnastics and weightlifting. A lot of people don't realize what they're capable of or what they should strive to be capable of. So we had Evan Slaughter on. I don't know if you know Fit to Serve, the Instagram humor personality. Evan was on talking with us a couple of weeks ago, and he made a really good point. He said, I know what I need to do to get healthier. But for a lot of people that look like me, they're intimidated to go into a CrossFit gym, or they're intimidated to go into a gym, so they're not going to. So then I'm again thinking of this, like you said, kind of marrying things together. If people see all of these things happening and coexisting, they're more likely to like step into that arena, versus like, I go to the doctor because I don't feel good. And then once I feel a little better, then like I'm done until I don't feel good again. Like not having that, continuation, or like Davey said, like the more proactive approach that I think we're all hoping that we can, be proponents towards and instigators towards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, it's one of those things that's tough because I think the CrossFit community does an amazing job of like new person coming into the gym, acknowledge them, make them feel welcome, make them want to come back. Once they realize that the community is really supportive and also they feel better and they feel really empowered with all these new things they're doing and their newfound fitness. I think that really brings people in and keeps them. But you still need the person to walk into the gym and say like, I'm going to go in the first place. And so I think that's the gap we need to bridge right now. That's how you get more people doing this, is make it less intimidating, less scary, less hard to do what we do. And for people just to understand that you don't have to be fit to walk in, and you probably like are better off if you're not. You'll get more benefit, going. And it's I think personally, obviously with my experience being in a CrossFit gym, is one of the best places to go if you're not fit, because, you're not going to this Globo gym where people are like looking at you and there's people, lifting crazy weight. And it's like, for me, that even as someone who's relatively fit, like that has always been an intimidating environment for me. I don't like walking in there. So I can completely understand how someone who like doesn't know how to use the machines, doesn't really feel comfortable in gym clothes, like wouldn't want to go there either. So I tell everyone, like, try CrossFit, go to one class. You might hate it, but also it might be something great for you. And you never know until you try.
But you seem to be obviously a caretaker in your primary job, but also looking after athletes a little bit. I want to just talk a little bit about your experience on the PFAA from the athlete side and being an advocate for the athletes as well at the highest level. And there's a couple questions in here, but basically, can you just explain? We've had Fikowski on, we've had Vellner on, we've had some others talk about the PFAA and its importance and the growth of it for the sport and for the athlete's voice within the community. But from your perspective, is that something that you feel is still limiting the growth of the sport, or do you feel like it's finally starting to get hold enough to where the athletes have a say in terms of the direction of where the sport is going?
Yeah, I was really lucky to be on the inaugural committee, just 1 to 2 years that we were kind of establishing that, yes, we're a real thing that CrossFit should listen to. And obviously there was a little bit of growth needing to happen with the legitimacy, but the committee now has done a great job, I think, of establishing themselves, partnering with competitions, making sure that competitions know that this is something that matters and that athletes listen to. And so if the PFAA says, like, we don't agree with the rule book at this competition, athletes are going to take that seriously. People are going to take that seriously. Obviously it's new in its conception, but not in its, in the theory. There should always be a committee, something that's looking out for athletes' best interest, something that's uniting us, because ultimately we should have a lot of bargaining power where, if we don't show up, there is no competition. Certainly if the organizers don't do anything, there is no competition, but you need the agreement of both sides. So from what I've seen from this season, I think athletes are getting more of a say. I think we keep pushing for the same things. And I've heard that competitions are open to listening, things like height of pull-up bars, safety mats under ropes, things like that. And I do think that's the way forward, because for people this is their livelihood, competing is their livelihood, they do everything that leads up to one competition, and then they destroy their ankle on a rope climb because they twist on the way down because the rope wasn't short enough for the ground. Like, that is devastating, and that's life-changing for them. So it should be something where anything preventable is prevented to the best of their ability. And I was happy to see, I think Brent put out that, some standards at a competition were changed, or they listened to their feedback and actually enacted it. And I think that's a really great step forward, rather than, being heard and knowing that they heard you and then didn't really do anything about it. That feels like, okay, we're kind of halfway there, but you need to meet us in the middle. And it sounds like they're starting to get somewhere. So I think that's really, really important.
Is there something that sticks out to you as being obviously needing a change? Something like bar heights, or, we were at Wodapalooza, and, the bars are uniformly high, and for a person that's 6'5", their feet are hitting the ground and they can't swing properly, have to do things really poorly. Do you think that there's something just from you being out on the floor and having seen it from every aspect that is like, this clearly needs to change? Like, this is just an obvious one from an athlete side of things?
Yeah, always. I mean, always.
More than one.
And this is the stuff that I think is like the low hanging fruit, right? There's bigger things. There's like fairness and judging and,
Sure.
things that people point out all the time. Our sport is relatively new. It's fairly unique in that we, do workouts for time and there's standards of the movements, but everyone has their own judge. You're competing against other people, but you're also like doing your own work. All of that stuff is kind of to be determined later. But the low hanging fruit, I think, is safety of equipment and the floor and the setup. So you go to a competition and the lanes are so close together that your barbells are hitting each other when they bounce on the ground. Or, like you said, the height of the pull-up bars. They set the pull-up bars for the mean height of the competition. They provide mats for the short people. And then there's one person, usually Brent, who's like super tall, and they have to bend their knees on everything to not scrape the ground. And so I think that's, and like it's ring height too. They do the same thing where, you know, in briefing, we're always like, are there going to be rings for like tall people?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, this is it. Come hang on the rings and see how you do. And that's a huge, you know, obviously that's a huge thing, bending your knees on a ring muscle up. It's not how you practice. And it shouldn't be how you have to compete, in my opinion, and almost everyone's opinion. I don't think anyone can argue that. So yes, I think the biggest thing that could show some goodwill on the side of like event organizers is just find some solution to like taller people versus shorter people, rig heights. Not, you know, you can't change a bar height as easily as you can change rings, but there should be a way. Like, I mean, the competition clips from Rogue are pretty easy to change ring height. Like, you know, you could do that in between a heat, I think. Or you could just set them higher and provide more mats for the people who need to jump up to the rings, you know. Right. I think another big thing that we see a lot, and I mentioned it before, is the rope on the floor. It should be that you either cut it so it grazes the floor, or it should be a short rope where you have to jump up to it and then do a little bit of leg lift before you go. Just too many injuries with people rolling their ankles, coming down on ropes, wrapping, you know, getting wrapped up in extra material and then like, you know, essentially snapping their ankle on the way down because they can't get free. I think that's a super easy fix as well.
Love it. I love it. These are all such important things. I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but I was on the athlete advisory committee for the Olympic, the USOC, USOPC for gymnastics for years. And these kind of issues came up all the time. And it's like, how do we create environments where the athletes can perform at their best? You know, what do we need to do for them to be able to perform safely and have all the tools that they need to be able to execute at the highest level? And there is just such a failure if the event just doesn't allow for that to happen. So I'm hoping that CrossFit can, you know, even though it's new-ish, it can learn from other sports having gone through these things already. You know, take some insight from other sports that have been around for decades and centuries and see if you can learn some things from them rather than just kind of trying to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. And I mean, it's nice to hear that other sports are constantly going through this too and thinking, you know, they don't set a system and say like, this is it. This is the safest thing we can ever do for athletes. And now we're done. I think it's a constant growth process, but CrossFit just in general, we need to catch up a little bit because we are new. And there are things for years that we've been talking about. And we, you know, you said you've heard this before, like I'm sure every athlete has the same examples because they're at every competition. We come up against them all the time. I think the other thing I forgot that I always say is like adequate warm-up equipment in the back. It's always my favorite when you show up to like a heavy sandbag event, a yoke event. The yoke is 400 pounds and there's not one in the warm-up area. And it's unsafe to put 400 pounds on your back on a barbell. So you have coaches, you know, like following you as you're walking to like, you know, catch the bar in case you trip and fall. And it's things like that are so avoidable. I think obviously the specialty equipment is always in high demand. So it tends to be on the floor, but we need, you know, warm-up equipment. It should go without saying that if you have to do it on the floor, there should be one for you to practice and warm up on in the back.
Yeah, it seemed like for years it was almost like point of pride, like, no, you cannot warm up on it. Just get out there and figure it out. That's what CrossFit is, like the unknowable. I was like, well, all right, I don't want to kill myself either.
And I think for example, I'll take like a pretty low risk example, the crossover double unders at the games a couple of years ago. They said they announced it, you know, right beforehand. So people had minimal time to like actually try it because they didn't give them any warning. And it just wasn't a good show. Like, I think they wanted people to figure out on the fly. And it just wasn't something that people were going to figure out on the fly. And to be honest, the judges didn't even know how to judge it on the fly. So it just didn't turn out to be like the cool event that it could have been if you just had given people a day. Like these are games athletes, they'll practice it for literally 24 hours and then they'll be able to do it. And it'll be like, wow, that's so cool. Like they just found out this yesterday. I don't think it takes anything away from saying like, we told them about it at briefing last night versus we told them about it at briefing 5 minutes ago. Like, it's better, I think, for athletes as well. It's just better to find out, be able to practice it, and then you can perform your best rather than sitting there tripping or like, the judges can't tell if it's a double under anyways.
Agreed. Agreed. The rest of that workout had handstand obstacle course around it too, and we didn't get to see the obstacle course for a lot of athletes. So
the cool part was the end, and no one, exactly. Like barely anyone even got there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that workout was frustrating for me.
Mike, anything you want to add?
Oh no, I mean, these are like some of the stuff we're talking about right now are definitely things that have come up when we've had Brent and some of the other like veteran athletes on. And I think, even just you coming on, podcasts like this and continuing to talk about these things, that's what's necessary in what is still a young sport where the athletes as a whole are trying to find their voice to be heard by the also like small group of people that are trying to figure out how to run it effectively. So it's like maybe it comes back down, to the same as the medical, pharmaceutical, and fitness industries, like just continuing to build bridges and like rather than get too frustrated with everybody from one side or the other, just figure out the best ways to kind of get to the end conclusion that you're wanting. So yeah, Steph, you just talking about it is already, it just continues to be another voice that needs to be heard so that the people that can put changes into place will start doing it.
100%. And I hate to be critical of event organizers. They have so much on their plate, and thinking about all of the different parties involved, I think they do a phenomenal job of running an event and making things happen relatively seamlessly. So I think that these are things that have been pushed kind of to the back just to ensure that an event happened, period. And so now that things have started to be established, I think it's something that we can talk about now is like, okay, well, now you know how to run an event. We know what's going to happen. People are going to come. Now we can start to focus on the things that will keep athletes also coming for years and years and years, which is safety, execution, et cetera. So it's just a natural progression. And I think the bandwidth to address these smaller issues will come.
Without a doubt. And making sure that the spectators continue to have fun too. You want viewership. You want it to be something that can be viewed in, in person well, but also viewed on television well and on social well. So you got to view Absolutely. It from a bunch of different perspectives. So before we get you out of here, Steph, thanks so much for being with us. But we got some quick questions for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, maybe.
First one, I'm hoping will be an easy one. What sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Gymnastics.
Oh, there was way too long of a hesitation there.
I feel bad. Like
I appreciated the dramatic effect, at least for a moment where, yeah.
It's like picking your favorite parent. You're like, I don't want to say it.
I think this just requires Mike to start asking some of his buddies to come on the podcast to get some. I'm way ahead on gymnastics winning that question, so let's keep tally going.
Yeah,
it's obvious. We should do a percentage, 200 and whatever episodes. We should see what the percentage is at this point. But thank you for that one. Next question. Anyone that you've come across recently or someone that you work with that you think would be a great interview for us?
Oh, there are so many. So I'm struggling to pick one that I mean, the first person that came to mind is Carrie Pierce. Have you had her on yet?
We have. We've had Carrie on twice. Another former gymnast, another advocate for the athletes. We love Carrie, and I'm always down to have Carrie on again. But I know this is a tough on-the-spot question, so if you do come up with someone else, go ahead. But we can also put it into the notes if there's someone else you think about that might be good.
I will. I'll think. I just obviously as a former very well accomplished gymnast and also just an amazing person, she's like the first person that came to mind. But Mike, I'll try to think of someone weightlifting related.
I appreciate that.
To even out the score.
I was at the University of Michigan last weekend, and Carrie's name came up. I was in the gym, and her name came up as, oh, isn't she doing something in the CrossFit space now? I'm like, yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Last question. If you are a book reader, any books that you are reading now that you'd recommend? If not, a TV show or a movie that you've seen recently that you enjoyed?
Yeah, I love reading. So let's see. I am currently reading The House of God. It's a medical book. So fiction based on factual people, but fictional. So that's been entertaining. I recently read Anthony Horowitz has a lot of like really quick reading mystery type crime books. I really like his style. It's always nice to read. One of my favorite books that I'm rereading now is called The Comfort Crisis.
Yeah, that's one of George's favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It was sent to me by Todd for Christmas like 2 years ago, and I sped through it the first time, loved it so much, reread it, and then now this is going to be the third time because it's always a good reminder for me. And
Have you
then
read
movie,
have you read his
what do you say?
most recent book?
This is it, The Scarcity?
Scarcity Brain? Have you read that yet?
We have it on our bookshelf.
Okay.
Yeah, Rob ordered it. So that's next. I'm rereading this one because I'm a creature of habit and I felt like it's every year I want the reminder, but that one's next on the list. Have you read it?
Not yet. I was hoping Dave was going to get it for me for Christmas, but he got me
I got you a
another
different book
He got
that
me
you should
another
be
book,
reading.
which is equally incredible.
Well, I'm sure it's great. I'll let you know how it is. And then TV movies, I haven't had a lot of time for it lately, but I love The Crown. A new
Oh
series,
yeah.
a new season came out on Netflix. So that's been what I was watching. And I was actually watching the Australian Open this past week, 2 weeks.
Absolutely. Just want to give out the shout out to Sinner, the Italian, who beat Medvedev in 5 sets after being down 2, which is pretty awesome to see an Italian, the first non-Big Three to win U.S. Open on the men's side since 2014, I believe. So about a decade
Wow.
of those three dominating. So we have an Italian at the top of the podium, which is very cool to see. Yes, I'm a tennis fan as well. Very cool.
I don't know all that much about tennis. It's Rob is into tennis. He used to play in high school and he's taken it back up recently. And it's been fun though to learn. You know, I like watching competitive sports, but I don't like them unless I know how it works and how the scoring works and technique and things like that. So I've been trying, but it's really fun. I love to watch Coco Gauff play.
Oh yeah,
So
it's
athletic.
amazing.
Yeah.
To have a next generation of Americans kicking ass out there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Steph, thank you so much for the time today. Appreciate the insight and all the amazing things you got going on. Where can people find you and what do you got coming up next?
Yeah, so Instagram's where I'm most active these days, Steph Chung too. Otherwise, I'm at the hospital, but hopefully you don't have to see me there. And yeah, a quick little bridge to what we were talking about earlier. One of the things to keep an eye out, I guess, that I'm working on with Rob is some programming for people who have schedules like me, where they work really busy days, maybe 10, 12-hour days, and need like a map for you get home, you need to warm up and cool down in like 30 minutes. And so we're working on putting something together. I'm currently trying to gauge interest in how many people would benefit from something like that. But just keeping those people who do shift work engaged and give them a little bit of support and bridge that gap, as we said, to lower a barrier for when you get home and you're just absolutely dead and you're like, I need someone to tell me exactly what to do and know I can be done really fast.
Yes.
So hopefully that's coming out soon.
Awesome. Well, you let us know when it's ready and we'll make sure the Power Monkey community knows about it.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for having me on. This was really fun.
Absolutely. Hope
you,
we
Steph.
see you in person sometime soon. Good luck with everything and into the open, and we'll be following along closely. Be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Mike Service. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Dave Durante with my co-host Mike Service and Jordan Samuel. Until next time, thank you all for listening.